Hi. So I've come across a report in The Guardian, which is interesting. Now it's in The Guardian, which is perhaps significant. It's not from the Daily Mail or the Sun. So anyone who differs with me on this point can't say it's just a typical right-wing source. Um, and it's about the controversial politician George Galloway. He's well known in the UK for being a bit of a left-wing firebrand. Anyway, I'll just read out the article. Um, Former MP George Galloway has threatened to sue Twitter after the social network labelled his account Russian state affiliated media. Former MP, but he's still very politically active. Galloway, the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, whose whose radio program "The Mother of All Talk Shows" was broadcast on the Russian state-owned Sputnik service as recently as last week, says he will sue Twitter in the next 7 days for defamation unless it rescinds the label. He must be pretty confident, but I'm just laughing because he switches party pretty often. He was once a leader of Respect, so-called Respect Party. Um, I work for no block capital's Russian media. Well, that's just a lie. You do, George. I have 400,000 followers. I'm the leader of a British political party and spent nearly 30 years in the British Parliament, he tweeted on Thursday. So, so what? On Saturday, Galloway's lawyers filed notice in Ireland warning Twitter that legal action would commence. Twitter have badly miscalculated here in assigning this dreadfully harmful designation to Mr. Galloway's account, said the solicitor Kevin Winters of KRW Law, Belfast. Whatever strategic, political, or other reasons were at play in making this decision has only served to galvanise his fight and protect his good name and reputation, he said. Good name and reputation in whose book? Um, I mean, this is pathetic. His reasonable request to remove this offensive and damaging designation was ignored by Twitter. That's simply unacceptable and inexcusable. Everyone knows George has robust political views and isn't shy about expressing them. But that doesn't entitle Twitter or anyone else to demonize him in this way. He's no problem, of course, demonizing other people. Um, the notice argues that Galloway is well renowned for his independence of thought and opinion, and he has never accepted or been subjected to any control, editing, interference, or other restrictions upon his right to freedom of expression, to hold opinions, and to receive and impart information and ideas. Twitter began labeling state affiliated media in 2020, focusing initially on members of the UN Security Council countries, widely seen as an excuse to focus initially on Russian and Chinese state media. The policy fell into controversy after the social network refused to label Voice of America or the BBC as such, arguing they were instead state financed media organisations with editorial independence. Since the invasion of Ukraine, however, Twitter has started to apply the label to individuals associated with state media organisations. Rachel Blevins, a host of a show on Russia Today's US channel, complained about receiving the tag, arguing that I am an individual journalist who does not speak for Russia or Russian media. Twitter declined to comment. Okay, disclaimer here, I don't like George Galloway. Okay, so I'm not coming at this from a neutral point of view, but I will be dealing with facts. George Galloway works for Russian state media. How he can deny this is beyond pathetic. Now, he may say that he has independence of editorial control, but Sputnik is directly affiliated with the Kremlin. So Twitter's designation is totally reasonable and accurate. Um, in terms of Twitter not designating this point about not designating Voice of America or the BBC as such, it's true that the BBC is British state media, Voice of America is American state media, and both get funding from the respective governments. But I do think there is significantly more independence in Western outlets than there is in Russian and Chinese outlets. And I think anyone trying to make an equivalency is just ignorant. You cannot compare the depth of state control in a country like China to the West. I mean, this is testified to the fact that the BBC often scrutinizes the government. Voice of America, I'm not as familiar with it. Um, it may well be that it's more inclined to be, a propaganda outlet for the American State Department. But I just think that it's a false analogy. Um, the fact of the matter is this: in both Russia and China, those respective governments have an absolute iron grip on the media, an iron grip. So I find it pathetic that people would try to make them out to be the victim. That it's sort of a how dare Twitter, designate them as such. It isn't even taking it down; it's just designating them for what they are. I'll come back to George Galloway in a minute, but just to point out that YouTube does actually designate all media networks with their respective countries. So, for example, BBC reports, it says in a little disclaimer underneath that BBC is British based state media. I forget exact terminology. It designates RT. Well, actually, RT is now off YouTube. Boo hoo. Let's bring out the violence. Um, but back to George Galloway. This man is an odious demagogue. He's a liar. He's a proven liar. Why do I say that? And how can I prove that? Well, Galloway claims that he never met Saddam Hussein. He claims that he never shook hands with Saddam Hussein. But there is video footage proving this to be the case. He did. Now, this isn't a rumor, this is video footage. And unless that's been heavily doctored, then he's no way to prove otherwise. Galloway, on his own Facebook page, has a picture of himself. Now, this is his own page, meeting Fidel Castro. Galloway has a real affinity with dictators. Um, so, for this odious man to claim that he's no ties to the Russian state is pathetic. His latest post, or one of his latest posts on this Facebook page, is ridiculing Western sanctions against Russia. It's very clear that Galloway wants Russia to win this war. Galloway's propaganda is an absolute insult to innocent Ukrainians being slaughtered by Russian forces. Um, if Galloway isn't a Russian agent, or if he isn't funded by the Kremlin, or at least endorsed by the Kremlin, let him prove it. Let him condemn Russian atrocities vocally. Vocally. He has failed to do that. Um, Most recently, he's defending Imran Khan. Now, Pakistani politics is a very murky world, and the truth is there is a lot of corruption. So I don't think there's any ideal candidate when it comes to Pakistan. But again, it doesn't at all surprise me that Galloway would go out of his way to defend Imran Khan. Imran Khan's anti-West. Imran Khan lectures the West on Islamophobia whilst turning a blind eye to what China's doing to the Uyghurs. What I find most disgusting and reprehensible about someone like George Galloway is he presents himself as this crusader of truth, as this brave individual who's standing up against the systems of power. But the truth is, that it's far easier for someone like George Galloway to operate in a country like the UK. He may be based in Ireland now, but Western countries generally, than it is for dissidents in Russia. I would cite the case of um, Muratov, and I forget the guy's first name, the Nobel Peace Laureate, who this week was attacked on a train in Russia going from Moscow to Samara. He was attacked with red paint, and the assailant said, "This is one for our boys." Now, he's been very critical of the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. Um, there's just no comparison. Now, George Galloway might get called names. George Galloway might even face some sanctioning in the West. Actually, it's very, very minimal, if at all. Um, Bear in mind, Twitter isn't even taking down his account. They're simply designating it for what it is. I don't know how Galloway can, with a straight face, claim that Sputnik and RT are not state affiliated to the Kremlin. It's laughable. I mean, Sputnik comes from the Russian space program, the Sputnik probe. At the very least, it shows that he's got an affinity for Russia, which in itself wouldn't be a problem. There's nothing wrong with liking Russian culture. But Galloway is an unapologetic Russian apologist. Yeah, that's, I mean, that's what he is. This man has shamefully, time after time after time, went out of his way to defend foreign dictators. Um, so for him to play the victim here, I hope he loses. If I was Twitter and the Twitter executives, I wouldn't lose much sleep because Galloway's got nothing to go on. This is typical firebrand tactics, bully boy tactics. He thinks by lashing out, he'll silence them. It just won't work. I mean, I really have contempt for George Galloway. I think he's a hypocrite. I think he's a traitor. I do believe he is a traitor, because I think he has an agenda that is anti-UK, anti-West. I think he's pro-Russian. Um, and if you look at the sort of people who support George Galloway, and he's got quite a lot of support. There's over 600,000 followers on his Facebook page. They tend to, a lot of them are Islamists, a lot of them are very vocal on those issues. A lot of them are sort of pro-Russian nationalists. That's the sort of support base that Galloway has. Um, this guy has long been a fringe figure in British politics. Now his supporters say he's a brave, pursuer of truth. There's absolutely nothing brave about being a cheerleader for dictators like Saddam Hussein and Fidel Castro. In fact, I think it's one of the morally lowest positions a person can have is to be a cheerleader for dictators. And I say that whether they are right wing dictators or left wing dictators, I include, by the way, pro West dictators, such as the Saudis. For people to go out of their way to defend any dictator is frankly repulsive. Um, there may be circumstances where you have someone who is in a situation where real politics is involved and they have to take actions to defend their country. But more often than not, it's an excuse by so called strongmen, and it's almost always men, to strip away basic human rights and to crack down on those basic human rights. So I just think that someone like George Galloway, who claims to be this purveyor of this advocate for moral truth and even human rights, it's such repulsive hypocrisy. And someone like Galloway, he has a sort of cult following, so to his followers, he can do no wrong. But I would ask them, if you are truly objective people, if you truly think that you're free thinking, okay, don't believe the CNN, don't believe the British government, the American government, whatever. But look at George Galloway's record. Look at his record. This is a man who claimed that he never met Saddam Hussein. He did. So that's a lie, right? He's a proven liar. Consider the fact that he has a picture of himself with Fidel Castro. Now, maybe that makes no difference because the sort of people who support Galloway probably support Castro as well. Um, but I really have no patience or tolerance with that sort of hypocrisy. People who claim to have moral high ground while supporting brutal dictators. I think it's sickening. So I don't think Twitter should remove this. I think it is an accurate description. How can George Galloway, with a straight face, say that Sputnik has no connection to the Russian state? It's laughable. It's laughable. If he has no connections to the Russian state, or if he is not pushing the Russian state's propaganda, let him prove it. Let George Galloway condemn the atrocities at Bucha. Let him condemn the atrocities at Mariupol. Let him show Ukrainian voices on his channel. If he is not a stooge of the Kremlin, let him have Ukrainians, anti-Russian Ukrainians, come to his network and challenge him. But I think, as it turns out, Galloway has an echo chamber because, from what I can tell, and I might be wrong about this, but from what I can tell, the sort of guests that appear in his shows are all people who agree with him and support him, or he supports. It's an echo chamber, much like RT was. Um, so it's sickening. I'm calling George Galloway a traitor. Let him sue me. My name's Nathan Hazlitt. In the unlikely event that you're watching this, George Galloway, I'm calling you a traitor because I believe you have a proven track record of supporting foreign tyrants. I believe that your Sputnik show is funded by the Kremlin, and I believe that you have no argument against that, except your attempt to intimidate critics by lashing out. it's it's not going to work. Sue me. Sue me because I'm confident in saying that Sputnik has direct links to the Kremlin and is pushing the Kremlin's agenda.